Welcome back for once another Weather at a Glance video. In today's forecast, we are going to be going over multiple upcoming storm systems that are going to be moving through the United States, which will likely be affecting everyone's weather here in the United States. All coming up in just a bit. All right, and on our first slide, we're going to be going over that map that you saw in the thumbnail. So here, what we're going to be looking at first is this largest top region here, and that's going to be the winter weather region. So as you may know, what this is going to lead to, this could be a wide variety of things. So we're talking about snowfall here, cold weather, and ice storms too. So we see a little bit of that icy precipitation coming in and mixed precipitation coming in, especially around the Washington, D.C. area whenever these low pressure systems move through. And that is all possible, especially along the Atlantic coast. So something that we have to keep in mind here is when these winter systems move through, if there's going to be more moist air within this region here, especially within this region here in the Washington, D.C. area, Virginia, West Virginia, and even down into Kentucky and Tennessee, especially the Maryland area as well, those areas all get affected by those icy conditions whenever the warm, moist air mixes right against the cold, dry air, and that's going to cause some intense convection and lead to some iciness because it doesn't have enough time to freeze into light snowfall before it hits the ground. So that will be freezing precipitation possible with some of these low pressure systems, but that is what this region generally entails. So here in the northeast region, you're going to be seeing a lot of that winter weather, and we do see a good bit of up to a foot of snow within this region within the next 2 weeks. So that is possible. We definitely see those type of conditions, especially with that cold air dropping down from the north. So we're going to see that very intense cold air move down from the north that is going to be feeling those snowy conditions, especially when all this warm, moist air is being brought up from the Gulf, and that is going to be feeling this nice little bit of convection that's going on with these low pressure systems, and that's going to lead to that snowfall within this region. Now, as we get into the central U.S., moving into over here near the western Great Lakes and into the central U.S., these areas are also going to get a lot of snowfall. Now, down to the south in Missouri, you're going to be seeing a lot of those colder temperatures as well. So as we move down here, we're going to be seeing a good bit of those temperatures drop, and there isn't going to be as much snowfall down here in Missouri, but we will be seeing those temperatures down into the 40s and 30s, and even sometimes down into the 20s, depending on if you're in Iowa or northern Missouri. Those are all possible with some of these really cold drops in strong cold fronts that will be moving through. So do keep in mind that that is all possible with this area. Now, in the last part of the region over here in the western area near Montana and all these mountainous regions over here in the winter weather region, this area is going to be expecting some large snowfall amounts as well. So we are going to be seeing that snowfall move in off of the Pacific jet stream, and that's going to be interacting with that polar jet stream, and that will be leading to that snowfall that we will be seeing. So we'll be seeing a lot of snowfall for these regions, especially on top of these large mountain peaks. So do keep that in mind. There will be some areas over here in the Washington Mountains where nobody really lives, but there will be up to 60 inches of snowfall plus possible on those top mountain peaks. Now, most people aren't too interested in that because that's not affecting them directly, but that is something very interesting to look out for in the winter months, even down into California. Some of these very tall mountain peaks up here in California, we definitely see those large amounts of snowfall as well. But mainly right now, we're going to be focusing on this region up here in Washington and down to Oregon. That's where those very strong snowfall totals, very large snowfall totals, are going to be being seen in that region. Now, what we're moving on next is we're going to be taking a look at this region down below. And as you can see, to the surprise of some of you, I bet, will be that cold weather down even into the desert regions here. So you may be asking me, Weather at a Glance, how do you think that this is going to be cold down here? Now, we're not talking about 30-degree temperatures or anything like that, but we definitely do see with these very large cold fronts that come down from the low pressure systems, and they're going to be stretching down even as far south as Arizona sometimes, depending on where those low pressure systems set up. They could reach down here into southern Utah and maybe northern Arizona, not as far south as southern Arizona, but we definitely do see that setup there where this could reach as far south as northern Arizona. And then, of course, those low pressure systems that dip down here could definitely stretch those cold fronts all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico and even south of that as well down into Florida. So do keep in mind that we will be seeing a lot of that cold air move through. But what that's going to do is any second that cold, dry air comes down, the southwestern half of the United States doesn't have a chance to stay warm because warm, moist air allows for that moisture that holds on to that air type. So whether it's going to be cold or whether it's going to be warm, warmth, it usually attaches onto humidity. It's able to stay there because the humidity keeps it centered down low wherever it is. So when we're talking about that, when we're talking about these dry environments, there's nothing to keep this warm air from rising and keeping it from going aloft and fleeing. So whenever this cold air comes through, it's going to take that warm air away and shove it aloft, and then we're going to see that cold air move through, and that's going to be shoved down into the lower portions of the atmosphere, and that's where all this cold air is going to be moving through, especially into this the northern half of this region. That's where you're going to be seeing a lot of very cold temperatures come in, even down into the 40s and 30s up into these northern parts of this region. And then in the southern parts down here, we're going to be expecting up down as low as 60 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit in some of those conditions. Now, if you do live in some of those mountainous regions within this southern region here, which may vary, that could lead down to 40 and 30 degree temperatures depending on the altitude that you are up at in this situation. All right, moving on to the next region on this forecast map, we're looking at this severe weather region here. So as you know, this is very self-explanatory. This is going to be where that severe weather is going to be happening. So in the midst of all of this happening, where all this cold, dry air comes down from the north, and whenever we see that warm, moist air coming up from the south in the Gulf of Mexico, that we always see that stir of convection here in the central United States, and that's going to be causing that little bit of storm popping. So we're going to see over starting about next week, throughout the course of the next 2 weeks after that, we're going to be seeing a little bit of severe weather here and there. Nothing too extreme. We do see the potential for tornadoes though, so if it does get too intense, then we will cover it and live stream it as well. So moving on to our next region, we're going to be talking about the final region here, and that is going to be the rainstorms region. So pretty self-explanatory here as well. We are going to be seeing a lot of rainy activity, so not as much as severe weather, because we don't see that dry air come into play, especially in the southeastern United States, where we get a lot of that very warm, moist air. That's not going to be the case. We're going to see a lot of convection in the area, especially with these warm, moist temperatures and this cold air interacting with that as well. But we're going to be seeing many strong cold fronts come through, and those are going to be stretching as far south as the Gulf of Mexico. So we are going to see very large scale systems move through, and that's going to be bringing that precipitation through, and that's ultimately going to be leading to very high precipitation amounts, which we will be talking about later in the video, and that will be leading to possible flooding hazards as well as these low pressure systems move through. There's going to be a lot of rainfall that comes through, and do keep that in mind whenever these storms do come through. Make sure that you have a plan in the case of flooding, because we are going to see rainfall totals up to about 6+ inches in some of the regions here at a time. So do keep that in mind. These systems could move through and cause a bit of heavy rainfall, and that will be leading to large accumulation amounts in certain areas. All right, and on our next slide, we're taking a look at the GFS precipitation type and rate. So here we are going to be looking at these systems move through, these systems that we have been talking about. And as you can see here, here's our first low pressure system that we're noticing. This is a 983 millibar low pressure system, kind of measures out about and stays at the 980 millibar region, heading up to 990 as it weakens. But that's our first low pressure system. It's going to head off in this trend up in the northeast into Canada. So as you saw there, that's where it's going to be going. Not too much precipitation with the first one, but as you just saw with that last low pressure system that moved through, we have a bit of mixed precipitation and icy rainfall that's going to be headed for this little corridor here, especially down into Virginia and in those mountainous areas where there is still warm, moist air from the Atlantic coast and Gulf of Mexico. So we will be seeing that little interaction there, and that's where that mixed precipitation is going to be. And then to the north of that, we're going to be seeing a lot of that stronger snowfall. So here in just a second, you will be able to visualize that with the forecast model here, and you will be able to see that to the north, we're going to get a lot of that strong snowfall here, especially up through western Pennsylvania and northern Pennsylvania as well, into the Great Lakes regions such as New York, and even down into the Ohio Valley, we're going to be seeing a bit of that snowfall as well. So as you can see here, you are seeing a bit of that mixing of the precipitation. Even up into Pennsylvania, we see a bit of that mixed precipitation as well. But then when you get into the Great Lakes area, around the Great Lakes, that's where that snowfall is going to be. So we will have to keep an eye on this, because we don't know exactly where the cold air and how far it's going to come south. So that's something that we need to keep in mind, because if it only comes down to here, the immeasurable cold air to start snowfall, then we will have a large area full of icy rainfall that could be potentially dangerous. But then if it comes down as far south as Pennsylvania, then we will see less and less of that, and we will be able to see more snowfall coming through the area. Now, as you can see here over in the west, we do see these low pressure systems, a couple starting off in the western half of the United States, northwestern half, and such as this one right here, a 1010 millibar low pressure system, very weak, and it only stays around the 1000 millibar level, so nothing too strong. It does seem to eventually come down to a 980 millibar low pressure system whenever it comes over the Great Lakes region, which could start a bit of interesting weather conditions with snowfall and slow impact conditions like that, but nothing too much. So we are going to see a bit of that snowfall over this region as well, especially something like this where we see that 980 millibar low pressure system come off of the coast, and that's going to be bringing a lot of the snowfall to much of the region here in the western half of the United States. So everybody's getting a little bit of this even precipitation here, and I think everybody will be happy if you are looking forward to that snowfall. All right, now we're moving on to the ECMWF, their European model precipitation type and rate forecast model. And here, as you can see, we do have these low pressure systems taking that same track. Now, what we are using this model for is to compare to the GFS so that we get an even opinion from two different forecast models so that we know that we are onto something here. So as you can see, there's that low pressure system that we saw in the last forecast model with the GFS. And as you saw, there was a bit of that mixed precipitation in this little region here. And then to the north, we had that snowfall. So we do see multiple systems coming through. It's like a party here. And we see a lot of those low pressure systems coming down from the west and even coming down from the central U.S., which is the strongest consistent pattern. And they develop over here. And they're going to be coming down with the jet stream over Pennsylvania and over throughout the mid-Atlantic. And then they're going to be headed north throughout the Northeast up into Maine and Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, and areas like that where you're going to be seeing those impacts as well. And then up into a couple of those low pressure systems we see head up straight into Canada, northeast, up by the Hudson Bay. So do keep that in mind. We will see a couple of those northern trending systems that won't stick around too long. They'll head up to Canada and spend time up there. But we do see that snowfall come through, possible up to 6 inches there with some of these systems. So these might be winter storms that we are looking at in the future here. So do keep that in mind. But in the western United States, we do see a bit of those snowfall totals accumulate, which we will be talking about later in the video. But as you can see here, we can see those generally 1,000 millibar low pressure systems. But as you can see, we're going to be seeing a lot of weak low pressure systems over the mountains that don't really go under cyclogenesis just yet too strongly. So do keep that in mind. These will be weaker low pressure systems, so no large impacts, but we will see a bit of those snowfall accumulation totals. And then whenever we look over here, this is where this is the main strengthening region over Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa as well. We will see just west of the Great Lakes, that's where the strengthening region is going to be for these low pressure systems, and that's when they're going to get a bit stronger and bring more of the impacts to the eastern regions from there. All right, now we're looking at the 2-meter AGL temperature from the GFS forecast model here, and this is going to be showing you about the level 2 meters in the atmosphere. We are going to be looking at what kind of temperatures we're going to be seeing. So this is near surface level, and we are going to be talking about those colder temperatures that will be moving down southward into the United States. Now, as you can see here, much of the western United States is engulfed in those very cold temperatures down into the 30s and even into the single digits in some of those mountainous areas. So that's very cold, folks. So do keep that in mind. If you live in some of these mountainous regions, especially down into Idaho, southwestern Montana, Colorado, and down into Utah, those conditions will be very cold and will probably cause a bit of discomfort throughout the area just because of those very strong cold temperatures that will be moving through. Now, even up in the Minnesota, we see some of those negatives, even in the double digits in the negatives. So we see very cold temperatures moving into these areas as well. Very strong Arctic blasts coming through with those strong cold fronts. And then up into the northeastern United States, we don't see as intense of impacts, but we do see down into the single digits throughout some of the regions up in especially in Maine, and then in the northern areas of New Hampshire, Vermont, and New York. So do keep that in mind. We're going to be seeing those very strong cold fronts come through. Pennsylvania and the Ohio Valley as well into some of the portions of the mid-Atlantic are only going to be reaching down into the 40s and 30s. They won't be going down below 20 much often, especially down in the mid-Atlantic. We won't be seeing much of that at all. So do keep that in mind when you are anticipating some of this cold weather. If you do like cold weather, keep that in mind that some areas will get more very cold weather, and some areas will get less of those impacts. All right, moving on to our European model here. We have the 2-meter AGL temperature product here from the European forecast model. And here, as you can see, we do have those very cold temperatures even coming down into the Ohio Valley. So we see even some of those single digits come down here into the Ohio Valley. Very cold temperatures. So it's something that you do have to keep in mind. Some other differing opinions here could say that the Ohio Valley could see some of those single digits as well up into the Northeast as well. So all these areas could see favorable conditions for some of those negative or single digits down even to some possible negatives throughout the next couple of weeks here. But as you see in Minnesota, we see those colder temperatures stretching farther south. Now, something I do have to argue with a bit here is I don't think these cold temperatures will reach this far south. I think the negatives will stay at about kind of a region that looks like this with this purplish pink here, this is where I think those negative temperatures will be cut off at most. So really nothing below that, but we definitely could see the possibility down to the southern Wisconsin and down into there, into Illinois, where we could see some of those negatives come down to there. But I think the single digits will kind of stop there as well, and we won't see anything really past Wisconsin for these very cold temperatures that we'll be moving through. Now, when we're looking at the next region here, which is the southwestern United States, which we were talking about before, how this area will be kind of getting a bit of that cold action, you can see these temperatures, these 30 to 40 degree temperatures moving down here. We have temperatures in central Arizona down into 40 degrees, and even down into Phoenix, Arizona, we see temperatures as low as 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So do keep that in mind. We could see these very cold temperatures come in, and for those of y'all who are very used to very hot temperatures down in Arizona, these can be pretty chilly temperatures for you guys. So you have to keep that in mind. Don't be anticipating anything below 50 degrees, but we could see some of those temperatures down into Phoenix and Los Angeles down into the 50s, 60s, and 50s. So do keep that in mind, especially if you live as far south as Los Angeles or Phoenix. Those areas will be staying mainly in the 60s, but anything north of that, anything north of Phoenix, Arizona, and Los Angeles, you could be in that battle zone for 40 to 30 degree temperatures and below that as well. So do keep that in mind. There's very cold temperatures moving into the United States with these cold fronts, and that will be affecting much of the United States, even as far south as the deep south. In the southeastern United States, you could be seeing those very cold temperatures as well. So do keep that in mind. There's a lot of strong cold fronts coming through with these systems and a lot of cold air that will be moving in from the north. All right, now we're taking a look at the 500 millibar relative humidity. So this is about the halfway up in the troposphere, and as you can see here, we have a lot of active weather going on. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of change going on here. We see humidity right and left, and then we see dry air coming down. It looks crazy, and I know it's probably hard to understand. So this is talking about how much humidity there is in the atmosphere, and the 500 millibar range is a great place to talk about because this is where our low pressure systems kind of sit at, the middle of them. So this is really going to be talking about what kind of humidity is in the atmosphere. So we see this large portion here full of 100% humidity that's coming through with these low pressure systems. That's showing you that these are going to be very wet precipitation low pressure systems, as most of them are. But sometimes we have drier low pressure systems come through with less precipitation. But these are going to be very high precipitation low pressure systems that are going to be moving through, and a lot of precipitation, including snowfall, mixed precipitation, and rainfall, are going to be coming through the region. Then we see some of these dry conditions move back over the area. Now we see drier, less humid air come through the area, especially up in the north with some of these very cold punches. And those are going to be with those initial cold impacts that are going to be coming through. And after those low pressure systems move out of the way, we see that cold air backing behind it. And that's really going to be causing these dry conditions. Very cold air with this dry air. So keep that in mind. It may sound nice with less precipitation and dry air, but trust me, it's going to be very uncomfortable when you have very dry air and very cold air because of the lack of humidity there to hold the warmth in. So there's going to be a lot of cold conditions coming down into even as far as the southern United States. And then you see that we will have very cold temperatures all throughout the United States. So the humidity has a very big role to play with our temperatures as well. All right, moving on to our 500 millibar relative humidity with the European forecast model. Here you see the exact same thing, maybe a little bit of a different placement with the other low pressure systems with this humidity, but you generally see that we have a lot of dry air moving down with these cold systems, and then we see those punches of very humid air with these low pressure systems. So do keep that in mind. We are going to be seeing a lot of low pressure system activity, especially here in the northeast. So if you live in the northeast, you're going to be in the main impact zone because all of these have to move east, and they are dipping very far south. They are going to keep tracking through the northeast and leaving the U.S. So do keep that in mind. We're going to be seeing a lot of that activity here. All right, now when talking about the weather and big weather events like this, we cannot skip out on the jet stream. Now I know this isn't the most fun and anticipating fact about weather, but you have to understand that this is going to be playing a big part in our weather as well. So when we see these very high levels of wind up here at the 500 millibar level, this is going to be dragging those low pressure systems and moving them fairly quick throughout the area. So that could affect our snowfall totals. That could mean that because these systems kind of trek through the area very quickly, that will lead to less snowfall than usual as if they were to stick around much longer. But as you can see, this low pressure system activity here up in the north will be bending the jet stream into what we call a trough, and that will be causing severe weather down in the south. As we always talk about in our severe weather talks, we have that bending, which causes the shear in the atmosphere. So what that means is when the cold front or dry line comes through and is pushing those storm lines through, when we see those bendings from here in this region where the jet stream runs parallel to the cold front, that means that the cold front will be pushing eastward, but the wind will be pushing southward or northward, depending on where the trough is in the southeastern United States, and that will ultimately result in tornadic activity with stronger thunderstorms due to the shear in the atmosphere, because shear always strengthens thunderstorms. So we will be seeing that possible with the upcoming storm systems that move through. Now, with the snowfall totals, again, we are talking about how the jet stream is going to be dragging these low pressure systems through. The main track of this jet stream is going to be in a path such as this. So if you live under this path here, as we just drew, this is where your main weather is going to be, and this is where you're going to be impacted the most. Now, occasionally we will see stuff up here in Wisconsin and down in the southeastern United States and southwestern United States, but this will also be keeping the southwestern United States drier, because as you can see, the low pressure systems will rarely be coming down here. So that's why we've been seeing this drier conditions throughout the southwestern United States, because of that La Nina pattern bending the jet stream like this as we see. All right, and moving on to our European version of the product of the 500 millibar height in winds with the jet stream. This is going to be showing you, again, what we were just talking about. And as you can see, the same pattern with the jet stream, occasional different bends, but we definitely do see that troughing motion. Especially sometimes we see those very deep troughs that are actually going to be bending, and that's your traditional trough. That's what we anticipate a trough being, is something that looks like this when the jet stream bends that far south. So do keep that in mind when you see that on here, such as right there. You can see that that's going to be causing that severe weather. Now, the European tends to push these troughs more easter, as we've been seeing lately in those model runs. But as we see with the GFS, it's going to be pushing that in more of the central U.S., which we are also anticipating severe weather there. So within this region, this is where your severe weather is most likely going to be residing, and that's kind of where you're going to be expecting those severe weather conditions. So do keep that in mind. If you live in that region, that's where your severe weather is mainly going to be, especially if you live in that region where we call the winter battle zone, where warm, moist air is going to be battling cold, dry air. That's going to be kind of where that severe weather is most occurrent at. All right, now moving on to the snowfall totals, which everybody is excited about. This is your snowfall total amount for the next 384 hours on the GFS forecast model. So we're seeing in Michigan here and upper Wisconsin, we're seeing some of those 16 to 20 inch snowfall totals. And even up in the New York, we're seeing those levels as well in the Vermont and Maine. So do keep that in mind. Some of these areas are going to be very snowy. And then as we move south into the Pittsburgh area and in the Ohio Valley, even down into West Virginia, we will be seeing those less snowfall totals. So drier air is going to be residing in these areas, and warmer air too. So do keep that in mind. You will be still getting a lot of rainfall, but less snowfall because of the warm air that's going to be moving through the area. Now, in the western United States, we see some of those very large mountaintops getting tons of snowfall, and then we see those valleys getting none. That is hard to predict in the western United States because of the shape of the land. So a lot of Washington is going to see no snowfall because of how warm it gets out there and how dry the atmosphere is. But then we are going to see some of those mountaintops get very, very high amounts of snowfall. So do keep that in mind when you're anticipating your snowfall. You will have different fluctuants in the western United States, but we see snowfall stretching as far south as southwestern New Mexico. So much of New Mexico is going to be getting that snowfall, and even in Arizona too. So do keep that in mind. Throughout these regions, you will be seeing a lot of snowfall, especially down into the far southwestern United States. We will be seeing that snowfall as well. All right, moving on to our total accumulated snowfall with the European forecast model. We are going to be checking out how this compares to the GFS, and the European forecast model usually does a fantastic job with the snowfall total. So we will be seeing this. This only goes out to 244 hours, whereas the GFS goes out to 384 hours. But as you can see here, similar anticipations of snowfall. We don't see nearly as much in the western half of the United States, in the far western half, but we definitely do see similar amounts over here in Colorado, Wyoming, and even down in Arizona, New Mexico, into Utah as well. So we will be seeing that. That seems very similar. We're already anticipating up to a foot of snowfall for some of these regions out there in the western United States. Now, what's going on in the central United States? So here we see in the central United States, we're not looking at much, about 4 to 6 inches over the next 244 hours, which is about a week and a half from now. And that's really not showing too much. We see up to 6 to 8 inches in some of those regions. And then up in the northeastern United States, not nearly as much as we saw in the GFS. So this likely will be showing what the truth is, because we don't ever want to overestimate and we don't want to underestimate either. The European forecast model seems to be right in the middle, and we will be seeing possible accumulations up here again in the northern New York up into 20 inches, but much of the other regions where we saw those 20 inches before, such as Wisconsin and southern New York, will not be seeing that as well. Now, More of the snowfall will be over Pennsylvania with the European forecast model, as we saw before. Those are the accumulation levels that actually increase with the European forecast model. Now, as you can see here, I don't believe this will happen because of the positioning of the cold air. So don't overexcite yourself with these levels here of 6 to 8 inches in Pennsylvania and the Ohio Valley. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it's kind of a hard possibility for that to happen right now as early as it is in the season. We usually don't see systems like that until about January and February and into early March. So if you are anticipating that snowfall, please keep in mind that this could change again, and that will likely not happen because of the positioning of the cold air. It will not likely be that far south, and we will likely have a bit of that warmer air in the region here in the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast. So do keep that in mind. It will come, but it's not going to come quite yet, in my opinion. All right, now we're going to be taking a look at that GFS total accumulated precipitation. So this is the quantitative precipitation forecast from the GFS, and this is going to be showing you in the southeast United States. Since we didn't see any snowfall down in the southeast United States, we can know that this is all going to be rainfall. So down here in the southeast United States, we see levels of precipitation up to 4 to 5 inches, even up into around 10 inches at a time over the course of the next few weeks. So over the course of the next few weeks, some of these areas can see up to 10 inches. And then at a time, we could see 4 inches, 6 inches dropping all at once within the course of maybe 2 days or so. So that's a lot of precipitation that we're talking about. We don't want to cover any of these northern regions here because that could also be snowfall that we're talking about. This takes in all precipitation levels. So snowfall, mixed precipitation, ice, snow. So that's why even rain as well. So that's why we're only focusing on the southern United States, because we know there's going to be no snowfall down there as of right now this early in the season. Now on the European forecast version of this, we're going to be seeing that there is still similar levels, and we do see, especially around the Mississippi River, we see higher resolution spots of about 2 to 3 inches, and then we see monster systems come through where we're going to be seeing at once maybe about 2 to 3 inches fall all at once, but nothing too much as the GFS. The GFS really put a pack of a punch on the southeast United States, but we don't see that with the European. The European is going easy on the southeast United States with those rainfall totals, but I do believe the GFS is going to be more accurate for this one because of the type of situations that we're going to be seeing with those large rainfall totals from the low pressure systems and cold fronts that are moving through the area. I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. A big thanks to today's sources, Pivotal Weather, where all the forecast models seen in today's video came from. I would ask you consider subscribing for more U.S. forecasts free of charge, and I would ask you consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on my Facebook page. Again, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.